Hello, everybody. I believe we're live streaming. It's so good to see see everybody here. Those of you that's tuning in by other media outlets, we can't see you, but we hope you can see us. Those of you listening by Power Faith Radio tonight, we so much appreciate you coming this way and spending some time with us. We greatly look forward to what Terry has in store for us tonight. And of course, our Facebook pages, B'nai Noach Fellowship, which is a private group, and a Simple Walk, which is a public group. And then, of course, we're sponsored tonight by Outreach Noah YouTube channel. And you can just go to YouTube, type in Outreach Noah. You'll find it. When you get over there, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell that you'll be notified every time a new video goes up. Also, you can email us at outreachnoah@gmail.com and look up our webpage. That'll give you some more information, outreachnoah.com. I think I shortened that down tonight.
There you go.
I think I shortened that down. So, Terry, I'll get ready for Sadaka time if you'll greet everyone in the Zoom room.
All right. Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to our Outreach Noah class tonight. In our Zoom room tonight, of course, we've got Scotty and Thomas, Ronald, Veronica, Bob, Wendell, Chrissy, and Fred. And let's see here. Scotty's better half, Annie, is joined with us. And again, the Zoom room is open. Our links are to the Zoom room is in the Simple Walk Facebook group and the B'nai Noach Fellowship, and also the Noahides of Australia, New Zealand also has the links to the Zoom room if you want to come and join us. Again, you don't have to have your camera on. If you just want to come in and be a part of the live class group, you're welcome to come on. And tonight, we're going to do part 2 on Eiver HaChai and the treatment of nature. We're going to be looking into the issues of grafting and crossbreeding, those prohibitions, and how this ties to the commandment. Next week, we'll complete this section on this prohibition by getting into the prohibition itself on what it is not to be eating the flesh of a living creature and what that means. We'll be getting into that next week. But I just wanted, a lot of people don't know how this ties into our environment. And I went with Rabbi Cowen's teaching on this, because that's the direction he kind of went first, was through the nature aspect, because we're given the sovereignty over nature, and a lot of people don't hear a lot about that. So I just kind of went that direction first. But tonight we're going to be discussing grafting and crossbreeding and genetic mutations and things like that, and how it ties into our biblical responsibilities and how to handle the creation that our Creator kind of told us to take care of. Scotty, you about ready?
I am ready. I have another story tonight.
Go ahead.
So, I call this an amazing story. About a year ago, we've on lunchtime, my employer and his wife and I, we all kind of three work together. We go eat lunch, because anymore it's about the same cost to get either fast food or go to a restaurant and sit down and eat. And so that's what we've done for now going on 20 years. I've worked for them. And about a year ago, there was a young lady that worked at a local restaurant. I try to keep myself in mind, Terry, not to give any plugs unless they want to help us out. So, but a local restaurant. And so yesterday we went to one of those restaurants, and I had a young lady come up and put a picture in front of me, and I kind of looked at it, and I knew what the picture was of. I just didn't know who it was. And so I said, who's carrying this? And it was a picture of an ultrasound of a baby. And she said, it's my husband and I. So I want to now fill you in with a story. About a year ago, she had talked to me that they were trying to have a child. And they had been trying for a couple of years and could not have one. And the doctor said there's no reason why you can't. We we don't know. So they was about to try, what do they call it? Fertilization. What do they call it? Where they help the egg along, whatever.
In vitro.
Yeah. So I suggested. Now, of course, they said they were praying and everything. I said, well, can I make a suggestion? Y'all know me about charity. I said, I'm going to challenge you to every week find you a charity box to give charity to. Now, of course, immediately she brought up about giving tithe to their church. That's what the people do here in the West. I said, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you take, it doesn't have to be a large amount, find you a charity box, find somebody in need, give it to a charity that does not have an agenda other than feeding, clothing, visiting the widows and widowers and the orphans. Just give it to that. So they did. They started, first of all, they were giving 1/4 a day. And then her and her husband had a discussion, said, well, how much if this is right, how much is our baby worth to us? So they started giving $1 a day. Well, he ended up getting a better job, and they were able to give $1 a day, and I'm not going to enclose about how much they were giving when they both got paid. And miraculously, she is now carrying a baby. And what I told them to do when they gave that charity, I said, have you got a name picked out, whether it's a boy or a girl? And she said, we're claiming a girl. I said, give that charity for that baby you don't have, and give that charity the name of that child. She's carrying a little girl. So I'm looking forward to getting some pictures of this little baby, and I'm going to share them with you here. I have cold chills every time I think about these things, and they're a firm believer now in giving charitable donations for things. There's a big long story there I could put, but I'll stop it right there. So they're happy and I'm happy, and Hashem is awesome, isn't he? Great.
I mean,
So, all right, here we go. We're going to use our this little charity box that we got from a ladies' school up in New York that sent it to us. So we're going to use it tonight. And I don't know if any of you saw the post, but we always start off our tzedakah time with Pesach and Shira Sherbo. Pesach had open heart surgery. I think it was like 5 days ago, 6 days ago, something like that, Terry.
I think it was a 5 bypass.
Yeah. So yeah. And so he's made it home.
Yes.
It's time for Pesach, and some friends helped them kosher their home, get it all ready for Pesach, and so get it ready for Pesach and for Pesach. So he's home, and we're starting off our tzedakah time with Pesach and Shirbo. Go ahead, Terry.
I got to talk to him just for a few minutes on his way home. I just messaged him the other morning, hoping, just messaged him, and then I got a Facebook phone call just immediately, and they were on their way home. They were about 2 hours out away from home. I got to talk to him for a few minutes, and I got to say, he sounded stronger and healthier than he has in probably a year or two, because he's had some health issues, but the robust in his voice was it was back, and I thought that was really good.
Baruch Hashem. Yes. So also tonight on our tzedakah time, Carol St. George, a family member. That's what she wanted to remember, so we're putting that in tonight. Also remembering in this tzedakah time, Wendy Shepherd, giving tzedakah for Wendy Shepherd tonight. Also for William and Tina Lyons, giving tzedakah for William and Tina Lyons tonight. Also for Wardwick Marshall. I know he's preparing for his next surgery, And so we're giving tzedakah for him tonight. Also giving tzedakah tonight for Ethylene Moore. Giving tzedakah for Ethylene tonight. Also giving tzedakah tonight for Ronald Dickman. Ronald, I don't know if you can use the word awful and good in the same sentence, but Ronald, you look awful good tonight.
I'm feeling good. I've had a really good week. So, yep.
Great.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to give tzedakah for you, and also Mary Parsons. Wendell, how's your wife doing?
Yeah, she's doing very well, thanks.
Great. We're going to continue. We're going to just keep them on for a little while longer on our tzedakah time. Anuela had sent info that she's not feeling good. Was it one of her migraines she's having today, Ronald?
Well, I'm assuming so, but what she said it was really bad enough for her to go to bed.
Okay. We always have, somebody always sends in funds in Amuela's name to go into the tzedakah time. So we are putting tzedakah in that they sent for her to put in, and then we're also going to give tzedakah for Amuela. And also Veronica Port, we're giving tzedakah for you, and your mother still, March, giving tzedakah for. How is your mother, by the way, Veronica?
She's doing actually really well. I've got to give her a call after the meeting here, because today would have been their anniversary. And so that's gonna probably hit her kind of hard. So, but otherwise, yeah, she's doing really well.
Okay.
Considering, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Also, Thomas Shouts, somebody always sends in some money with your name on it, Thomas. And then also, how do you pronounce that last name, Terry? Ted
Mowry.
Mowry. We're giving tzedakah for Ted Mowry tonight. And then also, I got a phone call about an hour ago, and we're giving tzedakah for Mary Patterson. And on our blessed memory tzedakah time tonight, we're giving tzedakah for the merit of Ray and Nellie Garland. Fred, you got your hand up. Do you have something for tzedakah time tonight?
Yes, I got a special request. I dropped off my daughter just the other day to my ex-wife, and she had a seizure. Okay. Her first name is Shelley, and evidently this has been going on for a little while. So if we can put her name on the tzedakah list for healing, and I'd appreciate it.
So the name we're putting it in is for Shelley.
Shelley with an EY. Shelley, EY.
Okay. We're putting tzedakah in right now.
Thank you.
Fred, thank you so much for that. Now we're going to ask that you help us and just join us in this meditation and prayer. Hear our voice, Adonai, our God, Father of mercy. Have compassion on us and accept our prayers with compassion and favor. For you are a God who hears prayers and supplications. Our King, do not send us away empty-handed. Favor us and answer us and listen to our prayers. Amen.
Me.
All right, Terry, are you ready to get started tonight?
Well, we're going to try to.
Okay,
it's been an interesting week.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on speakerphone and speakerphone.
Or
obviously, it's been an interesting week for me as well. I'm going to put you on speaker view.
Speakerphone. I just caught that. Can you hear me? Do I have my mic set up okay, Scotty?
Sound good, and you're coming through the radio. By the way, let me just say, our Georgia people has 54 tonight. We need to get them in the Zoom room somehow. They're living in an area. She told me I got to do some texting with them, and I didn't know there was any place like this, Terry. But they're still living in an area where it's like a dial-up modem. It's not it doesn't do the racket, but they have to wait on everything to get set up in order to come in. So there's not a lot of data can pass through. You know,
Right.
it's not like the fiber optics or any of that. So that's where they're at. But they are able to watch us on YouTube. And so they just want us to know they're watching that. I haven't heard from the coffee shop group down in Florida yet, but we'll keep watching for that. Okay,
All
Terry.
right. Not a problem. Yeah, it's been an interesting week. For those who don't know, I work for my wife and I both work for a Toyota dealership here in Chattanooga, and I work in parts, and we have a warehouse where we wholesale parts out and deliver parts to body shops throughout the Southeast for Toyota and Lexus factory parts. And I do outbound shipping. I don't do the local. My stuff goes out to, Atlanta, Huntsville, Mississippi, and all over Alabama. We got a lot of customers all over Alabama. And I was moving a couple of rotors this week, and one decided to come off the shelf on the end of 3 of my toes. And 57 years old, and I experienced my first broken bones. It just chipped the end of my toes. And I'm like, if you'd seen some of the stuff I did in the 1970s when I was riding on a set of handlebars and going over a ramp, on a friend's bike, and never got a broken bone, here I'd drop a brake rotor on my foot. So it's been an interesting week. Nonetheless, trying to keep moving around, and that's part of it. I had to do light duty, which meant I had to sit down a lot, like half the day. And today was my first day back full 8 hours walking that concrete. And I'm like, couldn't believe just a few days of not doing it, how quick it just takes it out of you. And you got to, acclimate yourself back up to all that moving. But other than that, it's all been a good week. I just want to put a little plug in here at the beginning. I got to listen to Chrissy's video at lunch on prayer. And if you can go over to my Noahide family on YouTube and watch her little, it's like 16 minutes or so video on prayer, really good. I sat there and ate my lunch and had my headphones in and listened to it. And it was something I needed to hear myself. So it's a good video, Chrissy. Thank you. All right. Tonight, Ever means high in the treatment of nature. We're going to continue part 2. On this section, we're going to be discussing altering the identity of natural species and how this ties into our prohibition of not eating meat taken from a living animal, not causing, harm and cruel treatment to animals. And again, I'm using the Rabbi Cowen's, Shimon David Cowen's book, The Theory and the Practice of Universal Ethics, the Noahide Laws. Again, he's got a doctorate degree in social philosophy and communicating the ancient morals and ethics for society. And he's in Melbourne, Australia, I believe, is where he's at. And so his book is really good because he goes through all the same stuff, but comes from a lot of the viewpoint on the social aspect of the laws and the social living instead of just the legal, the legal aspect of the laws like we've been covering. He goes ahead. This section talks about grafting trees, crossbreeding animals, and genetic mutations. He says, a further general limit on human utilization of nature consists in prohibiting on altering the identity of natural species. And I wanted to go over here and look at a couple of passages. He doesn't have this listed, but this subject on not altering the natural species has been a subject that I've kind of been very interested in over the last couple of years. And we're going to talk about that even more, in further classes on how it affects us in our spiritual lives, and not just this altering the natural species of animals, but there's a natural species that's within us as humans as well. And I've taught on it. I've taught on it in the past, and I want to continue to teach on it some more because this is actually something that's not taught on a lot, and it's something we need to really, really grasp. And it helps you become grounded and happy with your lot in life. And when that happens, there's a lot of blessings that can come your way and making life a lot less complicated. But tonight we're going to be looking at the nature of animals. The first one we're going to look at is Genesis chapter 1, verses 11 and 12. And like I said, Rabbi Hirsch has a really good teaching just on that passage alone that we'll go into again at another time on the subject that I want to talk about. When we're looking at these passages, we've read these all of our lives. Just, we read the Bible. That's the problem. We read the Bible like we picked up and read a book, a novel. We've never looked and seen that there is instruction for us to learn. Rabbi Hirsch, in his commentary on this passage in Genesis 11:12, he goes and states that this all happened before the creation of man, that God established all of his laws and everything within nature, everything how he wanted the earth to operate was established before he brought man on the earth. And it was man's duty to look into the nature and to learn from it and to use his free will, whether to accept what the Creator had set in place or to choose his own path, which for the most part, man has chosen his own path. And so I wanted you to see these couple of verses in a way you've never even thought about before. They basically say the same thing, but we're going to cover the plant life and the animal life. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 11, it says, and God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, herbage, yielding seed, fruit trees, yielding fruit, each after its kind, containing its own seed on the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, herbage and yielding and seed of its kind, and trees yielding fruit, each containing a seed after its kind. And God saw that it was good. Do you hear what the Creator is saying here? He is telling the earth to bring forth, to sprout vegetation, herbage yielding seed, fruit trees yielding fruit after its kind. When we begin to graft, when we begin to crossbreed, we are taking God's nature that was good and trying to change it. When God told the earth to bring everything in the vegetation after its kind. Now, Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 1, on over now in verses 24 and 25. Chapter 1, verses 24 and 25. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures. This is the animals. Matter of fact, in the Hebrew, that is nefesh chai, that's living souls. So all those out there, you say animals don't have a soul. Well, in the Hebrew, they are a living soul. The word for creature right there is not even mentioned. This is living. It's living souls is actually the literal translation. So let the earth to bring forth living souls, living creatures, each according to its kind, animal and creeping things and beast and of the land, each according to its kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, and the animals according to its kind, and every creeping being on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. There is a major emphasis that the Creator is telling us here of the importance of the species after its kind. And so that's what we're going to be looking at tonight, is altering the identity of the natural species, altering the identity from that which what the Creator made and said it was good. Rabbi Cowen goes on and he says, thus there is a tradition from Sinai that humanity is prohibited to graft trees of different species and to mate animals of different species. The crossbreeding of species in nature can be seen as a kind of prohibited sexuality. Affected by human beings in nature. The foundation of this view is expressed in the commentary comparing the mingling of the species with the transgression of bestiality, as is evident from the commentary on the prohibition of bestiality. And this comes from the Sefer HaChai, which I don't have that one, but it's one of the ancient writings, the very spiritual and ancient writings of Israel, discussing the individual commandments that God gave Israel. And this comes from the commandment prohibiting bestiality and how it ties into altering the species. So God, blessed be he, wanted that all the species he created should have offspring according to their kind. If a dog had a dog, it was to be a dog. If a horse was to be, it mated with a horse to project the horse. If you think about this, and even with the trees, maybe you haven't taken time to think about this. You go outside and let's say you look at an animal, or maybe you're in a zoo. Let's say you're in a zoo and you look at this zebra or this particular kind of monkey. The way the Creator created it and told it on the very day that that the earth brought these creatures out according to its kind, those animals that are pure thousands of years back to the exact way that the Creator said for them to be. Think about that. If they've not been tampered with by humanity and they've been allowed to reproduce as they were supposed to, they have over 6,000 years of genetic line that is pure back to the very first animals that came out of the earth on that day. And that's the way the Creator meant it to be. He wanted all the species he created that should have offspring according to their kind. And since this is his will, there will not be a blessing on greatness in that which is contrary. And so also with every tree blended of two trees will not be successful in producing fruit which is like it. Again, think about it. You go out to an apple tree, a pear tree, a plum tree. It has been successfully following the set commandments of its kind that the Creator set forth in the day he told the earth to bring forth the vegetation and the day that the animals came forth out of the earth. It has been a non-stop progression through all these thousands of years of everything being exactly the way it was on that first day that it came into existence. I know for me, I think about stuff like that. It kind of gets, mind blowing. When I go out and I look at this, maple tree, it's in my front. I got two maple trees and I got these white oaks. And to just touch them, I'm touching 6,000 years of genetic perfectness because the Creator said it's good. I get to touch something that God said was good. Just think, I don't know, I get off on thinking stuff like that because I'm like, I'm a Trekkie, I'm a scientific mind. I would have put me in astronomics and put me in, I love that stuff. Don't have the math for it, but you set me in a classroom and I can catch up really quick, when we get to studying these things. He goes, how much more so for the human species, the select of all species, that is not fitting that it should be mixed with the species of an animal, which is lower and lesser than it. I mean, God saved man to be last, to be the capstone of his creation of life. To put it, to take everything he said was good and to put it into our hands. And we want to go and mate with something that is less. We want to mess up that. Now we can see how this is a prohibition of sexuality when we graft and crossbreed. Rabbi Cowen says, this is because each of the species was intended by God with its own special properties to serve a distinct purpose. Everything he created according to its kind had a specific purpose. And if you graft it, you crossbreed it, you change it, and you rob that animal, you rob that plant away from its divine purpose for the whole reason of being. He goes, as the same commentary states on the commandment of the prohibition of crossbreeding of animals, which extends the same reason to the prohibition of grafting of different species of trees. It's the same lesson that we learned. It says, God blessed be he, created his world with wisdom and made and formed all entities such that they should be eternally suited for the needs of their purpose and his plan for creation. And since God knew that all that he had created was designed perfectly for the purpose for which it was needed in his world, he instructed that each species produce fruit or offspring according to its kind. As it is written in the first section of Genesis, and that the species not be mingled lest they lack in their perfection and God not send his blessing on them. Anything, Scotty, before I go on?
Boy, have I ever. I don't know if you want to get in these now or not.
Okay, I'll save some a little bit last because this is not a very long section, but I definitely wanted to bring this out.
These I have two questions actually, and they're referring to where you're at, but they're not referring to where you're at. So
Okay.
let's go on. I'll give them
We'll get to them.
Okay.
Rabbi Cowen says, in short, the divine plan envisions the reproduction of a species in nature and the reproduction without any change in their basic character, just as the human intended to reproduce its kind through the union of man and woman. So also is incumbent upon a human not to disturb the reproduction of nature according to its species. And I'm going to be answering. So I know there's going to be some other questions that's going to come up that I will be touching on this as we go into this on there is certain graftings that is permitted. And so I will be getting into that. It's not saying no grafting is permitted, but it's specific in this issue. If you got to listen, the wordings is very important here. There are many additional ways in which the minglings of different species are biblically forbidden to the Jewish people. Okay. For us, we are permitted certain things that the Jews are not permitted to do because they are the priestly nation. The land of Israel is under a whole stricter set of laws than the lands of the earth is. And that being so, if the Jew violates what he's told not to do in their land, it will not yield a blessing. We can do the things that the Creator has permitted us to do here, and the Creator blesses it because it doesn't have that spiritual restriction, because we are not the priest nor the priestly nation. It says there are many additional ways in which the mingling of the different species were biblically forbidden to the Jewish people at Sinai, through plowing with the different kinds of animals together. Now, again, though we are not prohibited to do that, we are obligated to look at the practical, common sense of these things. And some of these things that, even though these were commanded of Israel and we're not commanded, we can adopt ourselves. Like, you don't want to put a mule and an ox together on a yoke. I mean, that doesn't make sense. Okay. They're commanded not to do that. We're not commanded to do that, but we have the free will to look at the common sense and the practicality of these things like this and say, that makes sense. We shouldn't be doing that as well. By wearing garments made of wool from animal world and linen out of the plant world, that's called shatnez. They're not permitted to wear any kind of mingling. Like if you've got wool and it has cotton or some other plant fiber in it, the Jews are forbidden to wear that. We are not, but there's a reason for that for them in their service of the Creator. It is a sin for them to do that. It is not a sin for us to do that. Nevertheless, the only mingling in the human, I skipped some. And by sowing mixture of seeds, they're not permitted to take like a mixture of seeds and like say have squash in one row and you might have cucumbers or tomatoes in that same row or the row next to it. They are not permitted. They can only plant like seeds amongst like seeds in that same area. We are permitted to plant, 2 different rows of vegetables, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the Creator actually even blesses us because we're not given those commandments. So it's nothing wrong for us to do that. But for them, it is. They're not permitted to mix the seeds of different plants, like vegetables in a garden. Nevertheless, the only mingling in which humanity at large is biblically prohibited is in those cases where the 2 recognized distinct species of an animal or tree are actually fused to become a new species. Like you're not permitted to take an apple tree and a cedar tree. Just, I don't know why you'd want to do that, but those are 2 different species. And hint, apples produces fruit. Apples produce fruit that produces fruit that produces fruit. And so we are permitted to take 2 types of apples, and we can graft those to the same species, 2 types of pears. I've read where it's done, like there are certain, like say apples up north are hardy because of the winters and the weather. They're hardy, but you take some apples from say down in South Georgia, they're really good, but you can't plant them up north because the winters and the summers or whatever, the weather's not there it would kill it. But you could take the 2 of the same species and graft it and create a hardier apple of the one down south and be able to raise it up north. And I've read some interesting stuff on that. But apples to, like we say, apples to apples, oranges to oranges. It goes all the way back, to this subject. After the event that a new species has been crossbred, such as hybrid fruits, it is permitted to have benefit from them and to eat them and to replant the synthesized seeds. But in their first instance, we are forbidden to create the hybrid species. Our prohibition is on the act of crossbreeding and hybridizing. If it has already been done, you're at a store and you buy, fruit and vegetables from a hybrid source, it's already done. You are permitted to eat of that. You did not violate the commandment of the crossbreeding. We are just not permitted to do the actual grafting and the crossbreeding that contaminates the species. Rabbi Cowen says, while the tradition, from Sinai mentions the act of grafting trees or mating animals of different species, the question now arises on genetic melding of different species and its relationship to the prohibition. This is interesting because a few years ago, I was teaching in a class and the question came up on genetically modified food. Is that a violation of this commandment? Are we permitted to partake of it? And again, we are not permitted to do the act. That is where the sin lies, is doing the actual act of the crossbreed. But if it's been done, we are permitted to eat the hybrid foods and plant their seeds if they have seeds, but we're not permitted to actually create the hybrid food to begin with. Again, with the Noahide laws and understanding how God wants humanity to live and its behavior is all based on the specific act of certain events, murder and theft and robbery. It's the specific act that is done. And same thing here. While these matters require exact resolutions, according to the Noahide laws, it's important in considerations that are being gleaned from the reasonings given by our teachers, the sages of Israel, on the explicit prohibitions of mixing species. This includes the concept of the species were designed by God to serve their purpose in creation and that they should not be changed, modified, or a new species created. We are not given that permission to do that. In the context of cloning, the contemporary Torah authorities has stated that denying the order of creation is like denying the creator. And the creation of a new species of man without mating of man and woman is forbidden. We're talking about cloning. This is like you're bypassing the creator's design of procreation, whether it be of humans, animals, and plants. This cannot be compared to the genetic engineering and treatment where a new species is created, but where the abnormal situations, but where in abnormal situation disease is corrected to conform to the normal. Cloning tissues or organs would be permitted if done for the benefit of man. Understand, if it's for the benefit, because the creation, we are given dominion over it. It is there to actually to serve us. And in our modern technology, we find out that we can actually clone something from an animal that it can be used for medication to eradicate a disease, a bacteria or a virus that's causing harm. It is permitted for the sake of life. It kind of falls, and those have not studied the Torah under the rabbis, and I did so for 7 years. There's a statement and there's a philosophy, however you want to put it, within the Jewish nation, is that for the sake of life, the Torah is set aside to save a life. Like The Sabbath is a major issue for Israel. There's actually two forms of death that can happen to them for violating. But if you come across a situation, on the Sabbath, and you've got to have an ambulance, you've got to do something that would technically violate it, you're permitted to do so to save a life. Life is important, and God allows us and gives us the room to, even where there are things that are prohibited, if it can save a life, then we save the life. The life is what is important, because when God created man, that was the top of his creation in life. We are the only aspects of creation that contains his image. And to save that image and to keep it from suffering and things like that, it is permitted. And that's what they're saying here with the cloning of tissues and organs is permitted if it benefits mankind. The cloning of animals is only permitted for the direct life-saving purpose and not for the instance of getting a higher yield of milk. The only purpose that the permission of cloning is if it can be used for the benefit for mankind, to benefit, not to make him rich, but to help him in his health, to eradicate disease and things like that. There's not a problem there, but to benefit from it for like getting more milk, making more money, things like that, it's not permitted for those purposes. Rabbi Cowen says, according to this reasoning, the genetic mutations or the hybridizations of species might be forbidden according to the Noahide law through the matters that requires further investigation, because science is changing so fast. But says the human being is enjoined not to tamper with the identity of the species and not to do anything actively to destroy reproduction of a species as a whole. Now, to close with this here, Rabbi Weiner stated this on the subject. In his book on the Divine Code, chapter 8, the fourth edition, page 285. Nope. I need to turn over a little bit more. 293 in chapter 9. 293 in chapter 9. I opened up to the wrong bookmark. Under the prohibition of grafting species and fruit trees, Rabbi Weiner wrote, says, for Gentiles, the non-Jewish peoples of God's creation, the only applicable Torah prohibition against growing mixtures of different species of plants are those referring to the grass, which we've listed above, which we've talked about, the fruit trees, which involves a species of the fruit trees. It is, however, permitted to plant and to sow any type of trees and vines and grains and vegetables side by side. There is no prohibition against growing the different species together side by side in the same field or garden. Moreover, it is permitted to plant trees of different species next to each other, even if they graft onto each other by themselves, as long as a person does not do the actual grafting. There is no prohibition if an otherwise forbidden graft develops on its own, because sometimes nature, the trees will connect underground with the roots and they'll connect and do that. That's by nature. And they can actually, without us even planting them like that in nature, they could end up side by side. But planting them side by side is not the prohibition for us. The actual prohibition is making the cutting of the graft and intentionally putting it together. And it pertains to the fruit trees. It pertains to the fruit trees, those things which bear fruit. We are not permitted to crossbreed animals to try to make different kinds of species. That was one of the issues that was before the flood. There was a lot of strange things on the earth that were destroyed during the flood because of the crossbreeding of animals. during that time period. And the Creator has since made it even harder for that to even happen within nature. Some things just won't take, in crossbreeding. It won't take. But we're not permitted to even try to do that. There's not a purpose to even do that. Scotty?
Okay, where do I begin? One of these questions, I'm going to hold on to it and send it to you so you can, because it just pertains to a statement about the soul. And if it's okay, I think you taught on that one time before, but I'm going to wait on that one.
Now, is it, well, the soul, never mind. We are going to get a little bit about the issue of the soul with next week's class on actual eating of the torn limb. I'm going to be bringing out Rabbi Hirsch's teaching on that. Now, was this in pertaining to the soul that I was reading about, in Genesis chapter 24, 25?
The chapter 1? Soul of the animal and the soul of man. So,
right. That will actually, I'll be touching on that next week, Hashem willing, when we get into the actual violation of ever mean high, the prohibition of eating meat taken from a living animal, while its soul is still in it. That's what it says. We're going to look into that next week, Hashem willing. I think you'll find it very interesting, and we will be looking at it on the soul level as well.
If you would write this down beside what you're going to discuss next week, the difference between the soul of the animal and the souls of man. If you can,
I'll look in. I think Rabbi Hirsch covers that a little bit. I'll try to get that out this week and look at, because it's going to be partly what I'm going to be covering a little bit next week. Let me just answer that really quick on the major difference. Is that okay with Scotty?
Yeah, I've got another one for you that you're going to be talking about for a few minutes.
If that's okay with that, if that's okay with everyone,
go ahead.
Okay, I'm fine with it. I'm like we talk about at work. I'm here till I go home. Hey, I'm already home, so I'm here. If y'all just want to hang in with me, hey, I'll hang in with you. We'll have us a party. How's that? Somebody got the pizza and the drinks. We'll just have us a chow down. All right.
You keep talking food, people's going to have to.
I know I'm going to get Thomas going. I can't do that. We'll end up.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't get Thomas going. All righty. Let's go back over here at Genesis chapter 1 and verse 24. Verse 24. And while you go there, I'm going to try to find another passage here that I wasn't ready for, but okay, I found it real quick. And we're going to look at two passages here where we're talking about the difference of the souls between animals and man, okay? Genesis chapter 24. Let the earth bring forth living creatures. Over here in the Hebrew, this is Vayomer, which is where it says spoke, Vayomer Elohim, and he's talking to the earth. There's some other good teachings in the future that it's going to blow your socks off on this stuff, but I'm not going to get into that tonight. It says, but let the earth, bring forth. It is the word bring forth here is, it's been a while since I've read Hebrew on a regular daily basis. And I pronounce it in the Ashkenaz. Toitse. I don't know, Bob, he's around it a lot more than I am on a regular basis. Did I pronounce that right? Toitse. That's Ashkenaz. Okay. I got to wink a little bit there. Nefesh Chaya is translated living creatures. Nefesh Chaya. Nefesh is the blood. The nefesh is the soul that's in the blood. I'm sorry. The nefesh is soul. It is the soul that is in the blood that gives the animal its physical body life. It's its life. It's its life source. Okay. It says, let the earth bring forth living souls. The soul of the animal comes from the earth. Okay. Now, in Genesis chapter 2, in verse 7, Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7. I'm reading all this from the Artscroll, Stone's Chumash. And Hashem, God, formed the man of the dust of the ground, and he blew into his nostrils the soul of life. Here we have 4. I don't have that one highlighted. Let me see if I can find it. I don't have that one highlighted, but it's the soul of life. I can find it. My interlinear is like easier than reading the Hebrew in the paragraph form. Genesis 2 and verse 7. I'm going to go over here to my Artscroll interlinear. And let's see here, where are we at? 15. And he says, and he blew into his nostrils the soul of life. That is nasham. Nasham, neshamat, chaim, neshamat, life. Now, there's 2 different words for soul here. Okay. The first basic principle is this, in knowing the difference, is that the soul of the animal comes from the earth. The soul of man comes from the Creator himself.
Now, does the soul of man have, do we have, just filling in on this, since and this may be too much to cover tonight, our bodies are actually a partnership.
Yeah, our bodies are a partnership of the earth and heaven.
And do we have a soul of the earth and a soul?
No, we do not have a soul of the earth. Our soul comes, what, Bob?
Unmute, Bob.
We be complicated.
Be complicated.
We are complicated because our body comes from the earth. We have animal tendencies because of our flesh. Our body comes from the earth. But now again, this is a different word. Now we are contained, like you said, I'm agreeing 150% in with Bob. Is complicated. This is the reason why English stinks. When you get into these passages, you've got to know what the words are. And so if you see the word soul, okay, soul. Well, is soul nefesh? Is it neshama? Is it ruach? Those are three words that can be, that has been translated as soul or spirit. And each part of that is different. And I'm going to give you just a basic teaching that I learned years ago from my rabbis. The nefesh, we have a nefesh as well. It's a life force that's within our blood. Okay. And it's one rabbi who was explaining to me, this is like it's connected to your hands in what you do. The neshama, what we're reading here, that in Genesis chapter 2, when the Creator blew into the nostrils of man, it was a neshama. It's in his mind. The neshama's in his mind. I believe it was King Solomon says that the candle of, how's that go? The candle of God searches the inwards of man. And the word there in the Hebrew is neshama, the neshama of man. The neshama is in the mind. It's the highest part of our soul. It's the closest part to the Creator. It's in our thought. It pertains to our thoughts and in what we're thinking. It's where the image of God is connecting to us. And in the ruah is in our breath, and it's in our speech. So we see that the soul of man is very complicated because it comes directly from the Creator, and it plays in part with what we do, what we think, and what we say. The animals does not have that. They do not have the speech. They do not have the thinking and the common sense abilities that we have. and their actions comes from the earth. It's raw animal. We can lower ourselves to the animals. That's why we were talking about in bestiality. Why would you want to have, bestiality, sex with a creature that is lower than you? And so, but that is the basic difference. The animal soul comes from the earth. Ours comes from God himself. And that's the big difference.
So I'm going to ask you if we can come back to this, because I've got 3 different questions on this subject. So
Okay.
if you're going to be talking about the soul not eating the limb from a living animal next week,
Yeah, I'm going to be from Rabbi Hirsch, who's a great rabbi, lived 200 years ago. He takes the Hebrew, he dives into it, looks at. I mean, it's just I connect when I started learning from Rabbi Hirsch's teachings. It took my learning and my connection with the Creator to the next level in the way I am. Some people, don't get into that. That's fine. You don't have to.
Well, what I'm going to do, just so I don't catch you off guard, I'm going to send them to you the next day or so, and so
Okay.
you can kind of incorporate those in to that. Okay, we're
That'll
ready to move on?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Now, you already covered one point of this. This was actually 4 or 5 different questions from people, and I kind of formulated it down into one. You covered that, the shape of the animal kingdom, if I can call it that, prior to the flood. So there was a very good question came in. So, and I know you're going to have to explain the clean and unclean. I know you're going to have to go through this. But so the animals that Noah took on board, or that came on board, they were clean and unclean. Was part of those unclean animals part of the animals that were
Defiled?
defiled?
No defiled animals made it through the flood. The clean and unclean, understand, again, English stinks. That is not what the Hebrew means. It has nothing to do with cleanliness, health, dirtiness. When you see clean and unclean, you think, you think of a soiled dish and a clean dish, and that's not the case. It's tameh and tahor, which is a spiritual purity. Okay. At the time of Noah, and even to this time, the only animals that are permitted to be offered on the altar as a thanksgiving to the Creator has to be a pure, and what he deems as a pure animal. Okay, which is tameh. I believe it's tameh. It's the pure. Has to be pure. Even for the non-Jews, we are permitted, and it's not recommended, but the non-Jews can offer up an offering to the Creator, a Thanksgiving offering, a burnt offering, has to be burnt 100%, can't be consumed in any way other than by fire. It's called the Ola. It can be done, but it's not recommended today because of society. And Israel cannot. Israel was given a direct commandment. They are not permitted to offer up an offering outside of Jerusalem off of Mount Moriah. Once that altar is rebuilt on top of the Mount Moriah, even before the temple, they can begin to operate according to the way God gave Moses and Aaron. Okay. But even for them and us, if we offer an offering, or if Israel offers an offering, it has to come from the pure animals. The impure animals is the animals they're not permitted to offer up. Now, that being said, when Israel was made into a priestly nation, God restricted them even further in their diet, their clothing, everything, because they are the priest. They are not permitted to eat anything from the impure, what's considered spiritually impure. Okay? We can. Genesis chapter 9, God gave every creature that moved upon the earth as food, as he did the vegetables. That has never changed. That's actually part of our eternal covenant that God made with Noah, which I've taught on that in the past too. And we can revisit that our eternal covenant that we have, that the non-Jewish mankind has with God forever. It's an eternal covenant. Now, we are permitted. It's not a sin for us. We can go out and have a ham sandwich. We can have pepperoni pizza. We can do anything. We can eat lobster, and it's not a sin for us. And it's not impure for us. It is impure for Israel because of their status as priest. There's even a restriction within their souls that when they eat impure things, it affects their souls. It affects their service of God. Okay. It doesn't affect us. We don't have that. We are, again, I'm going to teach on, Scotty knows I get into this. We are a different species. We're a different species. God separated Israel. It's told in the Torah, God separated Israel from mankind. We are separate from them. And there's aspects of our lives that are not like theirs. We have a specific mission to settle the earth. Therefore, we are given the permissions to eat what we need to eat, live where we need to eat, and work 8 hours, 8 days a week if we have to. And it's not a sin. It's what he created us to do. And actually, the rabbis teaches that anything God permits you and you withhold it from yourself is akin to a sin. It's not a sin, but it's akin to it, because God is saying, just like with the trees of the garden, I give you everything. This is all yours, but you can't have this. Okay. He's given it all to us. And if we want to say, well, we're not going to, and if we do it for spiritual reason, it's a falsehood, and we call God a liar, that we're saying he commanded us to do something and he didn't. And we can get ourselves in trouble in this. But the pure and impure is not clean and unclean. And it's specifically for the service of the altar and the dietary rules of the priestly nation. That's all it's for.
So I don't. You all left me there for a minute. I think I had an internet issue, but I'm glad the class kept going. So if you saw me and I didn't see you, I said, "Oh no." I wasn't saying "oh no" to whatever Terry was saying, because I didn't know what Terry was saying. I was just saying, "Oh no, I'm left out here in the dark." So
yeah, and also Fred did bring up a very important issue.
He did.
The word kosher. So many people get, especially Gentiles, coming out of religions and attaching themselves to things they don't know what they get emotional. I got into a little bit didn't get into it, but this emotional person that wanted to do something that God didn't command to do, and they made the comment, well, just let God judge me. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to be next to you. You don't say that kind of stuff. But kosher is more than just kosher food is more than the issue of the pure and impure animals for Israel. There has to do a lot. Kosher just means right. And there's just so much to deal, like with animals. God gave them a specific way to slaughter. When they slaughter an animal for the purpose of the temple or eating, it has to be slaughtered in a way that the Creator showed them at Mount Sinai. And if it's not done that way, they're not permitted to eat it. That's why there are rabbis in slaughterhouses. And I believe it was Rabbi Singer, when he was in college, was a shochet for a while. And I think at the time he said they went through 50 cows. Even though they slaughtered it right, they have to examine the innards. And if the lungs have blemishes and the kidneys or something have blemishes, it's not kosher. The animal has to be perfect. Even the, in certain things, you can't, even in its fur, has to be perfect. Even though they slaughter it, there's a lot of restrictions in kosher. And when people are running around here that are not Jewish and not been trained and live that way, oh, I eat kosher. No, you don't. Well, I don't eat catfish, but I sure do love that codfish at Captain D's. Well, guess what was boiled in that grease alongside of that sucker? I'm sorry. I've been down that way. I used to confess I ate kosher and I did this and that. And then when I learned that I was a fool, it's best for us to just leave this alone. Now, if you have health issues, just like I've got a friend of mine who has real bad high blood pressure. He's only in his 40s. He's not permitted to eat any pork products because of his high blood pressure. Not because he doesn't want to, because, the Jews don't eat it. There are some health issues with some foods, and there are kosher quote animals that people have, allergic reactions to that they can't eat. And so kosher goes a lot beyond just the species of animal. It's a whole, man, it's like getting a PhD when you study it. It's really deep and everything. So go ahead, Scotty.
Okay.
Did I answer that good for you, Fred?
Yes, because I hear what you're saying about some of the things. Now, what you gave to me was a Hebrew word concerning the unclean and unclean. But we know those things. But when God doesn't waste His word, so He made a distinction between those animals. In my opinion, to also say to us, He's informing us that everything is created for a purpose. For example, and I was just kind of like you when I was in mess. I think I thought I was going kosher too, not eating pork and blah blah blah, knowing that Now, once you know what the cash fruit is all about, you're like, well, you're ignorant of these things,
right?
But I'm just saying that to me, in my opinion, this is my opinion, that the reason why I don't want to eat something like, because, I was down on the South and I ate crawfish and all that crazy nonsense. I was like, but to me now, when I look at it, it looks kind of like a cockroach. And it's like, I don't want to eat that. I just don't want to eat that. I'm kind of like, I don't eat things that, catfish or whatever. I mean, to me, it's not a big deal, but to me, I just don't want to eat it because I really eat bluegill. So I think that's what, a lot of times it is between the clean and unclean is because I'd rather eat something that is like salmon versus chicken and turkey, whatever it is, versus, there ain't too many people eating a buzzard or an eagle or something like that. But they would. I mean, everybody's going to be everything, whatever. But God gives us a distinction that the reason why these animals are unclean, like the vulture and the eagle and osprey,
Fred,
is because
Fred, I don't mean to say, but it's not clean and unclean as far as health and condition of the animal. It's solely spiritual.
But I'm just saying, just like
we can't. We're making a new religion when we do that. I'm not meaning to argue. I'm just saying we got to be careful, because if we do these things and we add a new religion and we add to the Torah that which is not there, it's not. Staying away from the animals doesn't help. I mean,
but I'm just saying it's a choice. But the person, I want to think it's a personal choice.
It is, but we have to be careful not to add to the Torah.
Right. So what we don't have the right to do is say to someone that they cannot eat what they want, which we know is fine.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just making the point that, he didn't waste his word. He made a distinction. And it does say, because, when it shows the categories of animals that are unclean, there's a specific kind. Like the ones that eat prey, and of course the vulture, blah blah blah, and we know that crabs and what crawfish do, what they eat. So I'm just saying. And then he said, here's the clean and unclean. But I'm just trying to say is, it's not really about eating. I just want to say he made a distinction. I mean, he's not going to waste his word, so he's telling us, he's giving us information so we can make our own judgment on what we want to do.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I know, but the distinction is spiritual and not physical. Religion has stated the physical. And I don't mean that to argue. It's just I am a Noahide Torah teacher, and I have to teach what the Torah is. I can't add to it, because I think of this. I know some people who want to teach, well, God separated the animals for Noah for us to eat. He said to separate the animals before he gave permission to eat meat. So it had nothing to do with it. So if we're looking at what God says, God says everything on the face of the earth that moves shall be food for you. And for us, that's what we live by. Now, if we don't want to eat that stuff, that's not a problem. Like I said, some people can't.
That's the point. That's the
Yeah,
point.
some people can't. And it's just like, Rabbi Singer even had a question. He was a rabbi in the Indonesian islands. And he even stated in one of his videos that there is absolutely no way that some of those people could ever eat. If God demanded kosher on them, they would die, because there's not a kosher animal or fish nowhere on the lands. And that's where we get
that understanding. Because really, if the B'nai Noach or people besides Jewish should have known that, everybody would know that. Everybody would know that, you really can't eat this, because if you do, it's going to cause you health issues. So I think Hashem would have been wise enough to tell Moses, hey, make sure they don't eat this for sure, but he doesn't say that, like he explained. He says you can eat everything. So it's just kind of like,
and for a Jew, if they eat pork, it has nothing to do with health. They become impure to do their service as a priest. So again, it's we have to know the Hebrew. It's tamai and tahor, and clean and unclean has created more problems from the English. I love what Spock said. Young Spock said in Star Trek Discovery, when he was arguing with his human sister, and she was like, I know the Vulcan. And he made the statement. He said, translation is not the essence or the understanding of the language. And translation has messed up so much. That's why I love learning the Hebrew, because I've had to correct myself once I learned some of this stuff in the Hebrew, and I had these dogmas that I built in myself from the religions I grew up in. And it's taken a while. Does it leave? No. I mean, I grew up in a church that, quote, ate clean, unclean stuff. For a while, every time I'd go somewhere at work and they'd have pepperoni pizza and I'd have it, I'd feel guilty. I don't feel guilty no more. Because I just want to share this real quick. Remember the other day we talked about elevating? Remember here the last week or so, we talked about elevating something, bringing it from its lowly state to its higher state. One of the reasons why God has Jews and non-Jews, and I am very proud to have now learned and accepted that God created me as a non-Jewish part of his creation, because I have a purpose. Because did you know that when I say a bracha and I say a blessing over my sausage, gravy, and biscuits, I have now elevated that sausage, that milk and meat mixture with the flour that the Jews cannot have. They cannot elevate that. So if everybody became a Jew, there would be a part of creation that would never have the opportunity to be elevated. And we, as the non-Jewish creation of God, said, I've got them over here doing this. I've got you over here doing this. This part of the creation, they're not supposed to touch it, but you are. You get to elevate something they can't. And that's a blessing. Think of the blessing that we can take something that God told Israel, no, and it's not a problem. It's their position, their priest. They have to be in a state of purity, such a state of purity to be in his presence that we'll never get to be there, but we have a special presence that we get to enjoy that they can't be in, because we get to elevate the things that they can't. And to me, when I recognized that all that guilt of false teachings in my life fell away. Now, when I'll say a blessing over something that I know that Israel's not permitted to have, but I am, I think of that. I now get to elevate this piece of God's creation that would have been left alone to just never be elevated beyond its natural self to a higher self that I'm going to get to and eat it. I'm going to get to take the energy it made me, and I'm going to get to go do good deeds and mitzvahs according to what the Creator wanted me to do. Now I've elevated that to a higher state, and that's a blessing. So that's just little bit there. And I know Scotty has
Well,
created a lot more
let me
questions.
throw in a couple things that Veronica thinks really good, and then
Thomas is hungry now.
And then I have one more question that we have to cover tonight.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, so I love what Veronica put in here as well. It says, and I guess this is dealing with, and I'm going to use the term kosher, not only the food but the kitchen. On the Jewish position of that.
The utensils and a lot of that has to do is they are not permitted to mix meat and dairy. And there are some commandments that Moses explained to them. They're not permitted to mix and dairy. They cannot have a cheeseburger. They have to. They have the Jews that can afford it. They have a meat set of the kitchen and a dairy set of the kitchen. They have the utensils, their cooking utensils and dishes that are strictly used for meat meals and the others for dairy meals. They have some which is for parv. Parv is neither one. You can have the parv with meat or dairy because it doesn't contain either one of those in there. I know that sounds weird for us, but that's for them. My first rabbi that I studied with, Rabbi Dovid Steinberg, he's was in his 70s 10 years ago in Brooklyn. He had a small 2-bedroom basement apartment in Brooklyn. And so, of course, he didn't have the space. It wasn't his to have 2 different kitchens. So to be able to observe this, like in his refrigerator, he had pails that he would either put his dairy or his meat products in there, and then the others would be on the racks. He kept it separate. He had his utensils and different things. And so that's part of being kosher is being careful with the meat and the dairy aspect in the kitchens.
Okay, I want to read one more thing Veronica said, but first, I know Ronald's sitting at the edge of his seat. So, Ronald, you got your hand up. Go ahead before I read this other thing, Veronica.
Rabbi Tovia Singer said on one of his videos somewhere in the past, we've all seen millions of them, he said, we don't know why we're not allowed to eat pork, but because we're not allowed to eat pork, we just don't eat it, but we don't delve into the whats and whys. It's a restriction, so we adhere to it. I had other ideas on a lot of the things they're not allowed to eat because a lot of the things coincide with it. They're carrion eaters or will eat anything, and I can understand why, because a lot of them are bottom feeders, the crawfish and all that. But really, that's not the reason. The reason is they're just stipulations being placed, and so they adhere to it, and not all of it's got reasoning why there's not eating. As you say, you don't bring health into it. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just what's been given, and you follow it for me.
Yeah, Rabbi Singer's actually said for a Jew to actually say that, oh man, that sausage would taste nasty. He goes, no, you don't know what it tastes like. It probably tastes really good. They're not even permitted to say something tastes nasty, because they're just forbidden. It's just strictly, we're just forbidden, or we're permitted. That's
Rabbi Moshe Shimon said if he was allowed to, he'd eat a ham sandwich to find out what it's like.
Every one of them has said that,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Scotty.
Okay. So Veronica also put on here a great little statement. It's when we say, I don't eat shrimp because it's unclean, that we get in trouble.
Yes, it's adding to the Torah that which is not there for us. We have to be careful. Israel's not permitted to add. And a lot of people think, well, that's not adding a boundary to keep you from violating a commandment is not adding to the Torah. That's a protection. It protects yourself. And actually the Torah actually teaches those things about setting boundaries. Adding to the Torah literally means we're not supposed to take in and add to or remove one letter from a Torah scroll. That's its literal sense. But in saying that, if you did that, you would be changing a sentence by just changing one letter. We as the non-Jewish people are not permitted to say God commanded us not to do this and not to do this and not to do this when he hasn't. That makes a falsehood on God, a falsehood on yourself, It creates a new religion. It creates a lot of problems. And so what we need to do is learn what is our commandments and what we're permitted to do in line with those commandments and in line with what we're not supposed to and what we're permitted to do. When we get into Eiver HaChai, we do learn, we discuss the food issue, and there's a lot of confusion out there. Scotty and I, we do not mix this, and I've seen terms like, Judaism light, Noah, Noah Judaism. Some people, what do you believe? Well, no, we do not mix. Again, I can teach on a lot more about this mixing. We do not mix what God commanded them and with what we are. We don't mix it. We don't touch it. We see where those that do, it creates some problems. Scotty and I have learned to be joyful in the presence of our Creator like He created us. I studied. I was going to convert for 7 years. I studied. I thought that's the path I needed to do. And until the Creator showed me, and through prayer and meditation, some things, and that the reason why it wasn't my path, and now why this is my path. And I have personally, I love where I am at in my walk with God. I don't look, you see on my shelf, I've got some things, they're sentimental from things from my past that I've kept that are Jewish items. I do not use them. They're just some sentimental things. I've had some very dear Jewish friends that gave me some things while I was doing my studies, and it reminds me of my friendships. But I am a full-blown pepperoni eating pizza, going to the Mexican restaurant on Friday night, Gentile, and blessing God for the abilities to do it. And so
Okay.
I had to throw that in. I personally, and what I've studied with Rabbi Hirsch, I really, really am concerned with the issue of violating the law of species with what's going on with a lot of people, not people, but a lot of groups. And I don't want us to be, just for me personally, I don't want to mix. I don't want to mix and crossbreed and cross and hybridize. I want to be who God made me. And that's how I teach. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay. I'm going to kind of change it just a little bit. Before I present this has come from Betty Willis, and this is concerning her dad, Ben, and of course her mother's there, Barb Willis. I'm giving tzedakah now for the situation, and it seems that Betty's father is close to leaving this walk of his life. He can talk. He's not out of it. He can talk. He knows what's going on, and they're listening tonight. We appreciate y'all listening. And so this question deals with, and I'm just going to present it the way she presented it to me. Okay. Man dies, soul leaves, or is it soul leaves and man dies? Did that make sense the way I said it?
When the soul leaves the body dies. The scripture is clear that our soul returns back to where it came from. God breathed it into us, and so therefore it returns. What goes on over there? We know there's the heavenly court. We know there are things going on. We have no clue. We've not been there. Nobody's returned. That's between, when God says that which is not as revealed as his, that's between him and us when we're there. But yes, the body will leave, or the soul will leave. That's when you'll see. I've not got to be in the presence of when that has happened. I've got a lot of friends that have, been with loved ones in that state. I wasn't with my mom at that happened. My brother was with my mom when she passed in a different state. Generally, what I understand, most people when they pass, there's like an exhaling. There's just and the soul returns back to the Creator. The body's going to return back to the earth.
What the reason she was bringing this up is, and I want to keep this without throwing anything, but some religious folk came over and the body, the time does not end until it's time to end. Correct? You know what I'm talking about?
You're talking about when the life of the body ends.
When the soul leaves.
Because afterlife is I've even heard the rabbis are now saying that word's got to be not used because it's not afterlife. It's actually going into life.
Yes. but when it's timely. The soul is going to leave the body when the Creator says it's time, the soul will leave the body. Okay.
We are not to interrupt that.
Okay.
That's what we learned when we were studying murder and euthanasia and stuff. We are not permitted to interrupt the death process. Unless we can save the life, we're permitted to do that, but we're not permitted to end a life.
Betty,
only Hashem does that.
Betty, if you want to call, I've got my phone hooked up to the board. If you want to call,
go ahead, Chrissy.
Go ahead, Chrissy.
I'm just speaking from a nursing background, and one of the things that most nurses, especially, I suppose nurses that, believe in God and that, we always encourage the family when someone was dying, often as soon as the doctor or nurse pronounces them dead, people feel they've got to get up and leave the room. Well, I always encourage them not to stay with their loved one, because I can tell you, and most nurses would back me up, whatever happens, it's a wrenching thing for that soul to leave that body. And we've had people say after 2 or 3 hours, Dad's gone now. And that there is a physical change. And so we believe as nurses and that the soul it might leave the body, but it's hovering.
Yeah, it doesn't go immediately. There's a process.
Yes, and mostly the family will stay there, and then one of them might come out and say, Dad's gone now, meaning they can see there's a change even in the face of the deceased. And they would know because they're family, or, we know it's over now. So it's not just the cessation of the brainwaves or the heartbeat, but when families say that to you, and nurses know that, we've known that since probably
immortal
Nightingale time, but there's always this rush, once someone has died, it's a rush to fold their arms and cover their face and everything. And we say, no, don't do that. Don't do that. That's not
right. Just
leave the person and let the family decide. And if talk to other people about it who are nurses, and I think most of them will tell you a similar thing, that death is part of life. So don't hide it.
Right. One of the beautiful traditions that in customs, let me say tradition and customs of our Jewish brothers and sisters, is at the time of death, they generally have someone sitting there, is to read the Psalms aloud. Read the Psalms aloud. Through that whole process that Christy just mentioned. Rabbi Brody of Breslov, Israel, who I've listened to since 2008 or so, he talks on this matter that when like Christy said, it is a wrenching thing. A soul has been attached to that body, let's say 80 years or however long. It does not want to leave. It has a partnership and he teaches that when a soul separates from the body, that there is actually a great wailing that goes out throughout the spirit realm. Because at that very moment, that soul sees how easy it was to fix everything that they didn't get to fix. And they want to come back. They want to come back. They want to come back and fix the things they want to, but it can't. And so that's the reason why they're reading the Psalms, they're comforting the soul. You've got to be careful if you're with someone who has just passed away. You want to be careful with the words you use. If you don't know what to say, whatever, take you a book of Psalms and just read the Psalms, Psalms 145, things like that. Just read the Psalms, the comforting Psalms. I know I've probably got a list here of Psalms like that that you can read during that time period. But that is highly recommended. And those of us of the non-Jewish nations, that would be a good custom to adopt, was if you're going to be in the presence of a loved one or a friend or something like that, just sit and read the Psalms aloud. Don't even conversate, just sit and read the Psalms. Even if you just start with Psalms 1 and just start reading, it's the best thing you can do. It'll bring comfort to the soul. Go ahead, Scotty.
No, I was just going to tell you, I told Betty she could call, but she said she wasn't able right now, but she appreciated it, and she just asked which psalm is best, and then you brought that out. So
Hold on, just if you don't mind. These are my three books of Psalms, and they've all got listings in them. Hold on, there's a list. Let me see what it says here in the back. It's been a while since I looked at that. I know I've got my favorites. You got Psalms 20 for when there's a time of distress, that if you know someone who's going through some hard times, that you can recite. Let's see here. That's special days, Sabbaths, Psalm of the months. Prayer for the sick. I can't find that particular list right now. Scotty, I mean, I can get it to you. It's just I haven't been in this area in a while.
Yep.
To discuss that. Let me look at one quick other thing real quick.
Bob, you unmuted. Do you have?
Bob, yeah, Bob, if you got it real quick or whatever.
Maybe you didn't unmute. I was just looking up and I was looking in a different direction. So if you or Chrissy or Ronald has information, just to give her a basic information. Her and her mother, Barb. Betty, they're looking. So
I've got so much resources here that I'm.
Maybe you can kind of look, or you think you're pretty close to finding it.
Hold on a second here. Life situations. 79. Births. Marriage. Divorce. Okay.
Fred kind of put in there that there's some of the prayers in a divine code, but they don't. I'm sure they don't. Betty and her family doesn't have.
No, that's what I was looking for. Actually, my Brit Alam. There's just some things here, but it's not got the list of Psalms. I know I've got the list of Psalms for all the occasions. Like,
you can send it to me.
I will look it up. But there, a lot of them, I believe, is praising the Creator, things like that. I'm not going to say I've got the prayer. I've got the Psalms for the sick.
Can I interrupt?
Go ahead.
I've got clear in the prayers for Noahides, psalms that may be recited for mourners. Will that help those psalm numbers?
Good question.
What was that question again?
Well, psalms that may be recited by mourners. All or part of the following psalms may be recited by mourners, eulogists, as meditations on earthly life.
Right.
Eulogists or mourners, yeah. Would you want those numbers?
We can probably get those to Scotty. Just message them to Scotty.
Yeah, I'll do it after we finish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm getting the same thing, like different things for, you know, at the graves of the righteous and the house of mourning. Let's see here. That's Psalms 49.
Psalms 23, I think, is one of the.
Yeah,
the-
Psalms
Yeah,
23 is definitely one of them.
Yeah, that's the first one on this list.
Okay.
This is like House of the Mourning, like Psalms 49.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, to the magician by the sons of Korah, a hymn. Hear this, all you nations. So this includes everyone. All you nations, listen, all inhabitants of the decaying world, both sons of Adam and sons of man, rich and poor and brother. My mouth will speak in wise things, and meditation in my heart's and understanding. I will incline my ear to a parable. I will solve my riddle with the harp. Why should I be afraid in the days of evil? The sin I trod upon will surround me. Those who rely on their possessions and their great wealth that take pride. A brother will not redeem me. He will not give God his ransom, for exorbitant is the redemption of their soul. So he forsakes it forever. Yet would that he live on into eternity and not see the bottomless pit, for he sees that the wise men die, but the fool, as Bruce just goes through the righteous and the wicked there. And it's kind of a little bit of a long psalm, but Psalms 149 is one of them. Also Psalms, I would say Psalms at least part of Psalms 139,
verses 1 to 18.
Where can I go in your presence? Not, I'll be there. And David says, if I make my bed in the pit, which is the grave, behold, you are there. Know that there's nowhere that we can go, whether in heaven and earth and in the pit, that he's not there.
But if they send me any more, I'll send them on to you.
I just sent a couple. It's those ones, Scotty.
Okay, thank you. Oh yes, thank you. Let me forward that right now. Sorry, hold on, everybody.
No, not a problem. That's part of what we do.
Shoot it over to the radio. Thank you, Ronald. Okay. All right. Betty and Barb says thank you all so much.
You're welcome.
So does Ben. Ben is alert and talking. So, okay. All right, everybody. Well, Terry, thank you so much for the class tonight. We're going to come to a close. And so we look forward to next week.
Next week we're going to get more into the definition, what it means to not eat meat taken from a living animal, and what the Torah states. We'll be bringing up the issues of the soul again from Rabbi Hirsch and his discussion on the issue.
Okay, good deal.
Things like that.
Good deal. Well, I'm just going to cut this quick. I thank everybody for listening to Power Faith Radio. Those of you listening to our Facebook pages, B'nai Noach Fellowship, which is a private group, and A Simple Walk, which is a public group. In A Simple Walk, you can share those videos with all your social media platforms. Please comment, ask questions, and of course, it's brought to you by Outreach Noah. You can see all these videos on Outreach Noah YouTube channel. Just go there, type in Outreach Noah to come up. While you're there, go ahead and subscribe to that channel and hit that notification bell that you'll be notified every time a new video goes up. And you can also reach us through outreachnoah@gmail.com, and you can go to the webpage outreachnoah.com. We thank everybody for, what was you going to say?
Was her name Betty?
Betty, yes.
If she's still listening, I just want to read to you. My favorite psalm is Psalms 145. It's called the Ashrei. Psalms 145 verse 9, the eternal is good to all, and his compassion is over all his creatures. Understand every aspect of every part of life. The Creator's compassion is over all of his creatures, and his mercy is on all of us.
Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. All right, everybody. We will see you next week. So long.
Bye-bye.